Subscribe to this podcast to get exclusive access to the after show Shooting the Breeze.
Hello and welcome to Cool Explorations. Today on the podcast, we are going to be doing a little something different. I, Tony Peters, your host, will be sharing my testimony. We had a cancellation due to COVID, so I have some time, and I'm going to share with you. I hope it helps you and is an impact. Hello and welcome to Cool Explorations. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to share my testimony, as I think it's only fair since I ask everybody to share theirs. So all's fair as it goes around. So I do want to have a little bit of a statement before just saying, please don't judge anybody in the testimony. I am about a point where I've forgiven people. I've moved on. It's not up to me to judge them. It's up to God to judge people. So please don't judge people or think poorly of people because of the testimony, because that's not the purpose of this testimony at all. So yeah, with that, I want you to know, first of all, God is gracious. God is forgiving. God is loving. He's always there, no matter what goes on in our lives. He's always there. And he will always be there for us. He will always be there for you. Even when you struggle and you think that times are hard, I don't know how I'll move on. You just have to trust in God, pray to him, give him time to work in your life and to complete whatever he is trying to strengthen and build within you. And I want you to look at a verse that has stuck through me all through since I was a young teen. And that is Philippians 4:12-13. And that says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. And that is the key part. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Remember that. And that has gotten me through so much in my life, especially now. I look at it and it's just like, yeah, God has been there. He's been there through everything. And God has placed my testimony, he's placed sharing it on my heart. I've shared it before. And he wants me to, I feel like he really wants me to give everybody an update on what's going on, and the healing and the strength that he's given me to speak out, and how powerful it is to speak out. So my life began into a strange non-Christian relationship, and this was in Agassiz, BC, which is near Vancouver. For those who don't know BC very well, it's right on the west coast. And right near the US border. So my mom was already struggling with some mental illness at a time when no one really recognized or accepted mental illness as going on. It's something her side of the family's always really struggled with and battled with, and to this day they really battle with. And that was passed on to me. I struggle with mental illness as well, and I'm not ashamed to say it. And my dad would often come home to find us crying or not really having been taken care of in the best of ways. And I know my mom's probably going through a lot of postpartum. So again, please don't judge her. And so my dad, he decided that he was going to take us out of that situation. He divorced my mom. He moved out. There's probably other reasons behind it that I have not been made aware of. I'm sure there was a lot more to it. So again, I'm not judging, so please don't judge yourself against these people. And after he took us away and divorced, my mom was supposed to have us every second weekend, but oftentimes she didn't show up. And often this was because she was involved with a bunch of other men. It seemed like a different man all the time. It was hard to keep up with. And my brother and I would get really, really upset about this. We'd be really angry and crying. And we would take it out on my dad, and my dad would really just take it. And it says a lot about my dad's character that he was able to just take that. And then when I was 4, my dad has been seeing this a woman that is now an amazing mother to us. He married her, um, and at that time, that was a real blessing to us. That she came into our lives and she was able to help take care of us and be that mother figure in our lives. I know she really struggled with that. It's hard stepping in as a stepmom. That can be really, really tough. So, yeah, I think she did a great job for what she was handed. A time when we weren't always the easiest to take care of. We could be angry at times and really struggle. So for her to figure out motherhood at a time when she hadn't had that time with us as a baby, or even the little toddler stage, she didn't get that. So it was hard for her to step into, and I really credit her for what she had done and what she has done and currently does in our lives. When I need somebody to talk to, she's often the one I turn to. So that was a real blessing that God put into my life at that time. Um, and lucky for me, my parents, my dad had become a Christian, so he led me to Christ at the age of 5. And when my dad did get married, it was a time of kind of mixed emotions. We were kind of happy to see my dad happy, but we were kind of angry at the same time that it wasn't my mother that he was with. And I did act out during the wedding. Shame to say, I was not the most pleasant during that wedding. Um, it was around this time that I ended up being molested for the first time as well, an experience that my brain really tried to black out, but it would come back in flashbacks that would just stop me in my tracks. And this was up until just very recently. And I would wake up with nightmares. Um, and I had to get a lot of counseling for that. I was molested by a teenage foster child of friends of ours from church that we stabled our horses at their farm. I can still remember just the helplessness and being afraid um, at that time. I felt alone and isolated. Like I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop it, and I was angry that I couldn't stop it. And I see it now in that kind of out of body experience where you're floating above, where your brain just kind of shuts down and um, stops things from really coming in a proper way. It takes you out of the situation, and I, yeah, it was really hard. When I told my parents, I did omit a lot of the severity of what went on. I won't get into a lot of that what went on just because it is very graphic, and I just felt like it was my fault. Like I should have done something. I should have shouted. I should have done this. I should have done that, and things might have been different. But afterwards, the social workers did have a meeting with the foster parents as well as our parents, and they kind of discussed me without me being a part of that. Really, they did talk to me a little bit about it, but I didn't receive any proper counseling, and it just wasn't something we discussed ever again. I would every once in a while, I think I would maybe bring it up. I don't remember, but it just wasn't something we talked about as a family. My parents just thought it was fine, um, but I really wasn't fine. And there was a lot of stigma that went around such things and shame um, that shouldn't be there, but is there. And I think my parents felt a lot of guilt for what happened too, that it happened. And I don't know 100% their side of things, and so I'm not going to try and explain their side of things because, and I'm not going to judge them because it's a tough situation, and hopefully with my kids, I'll never have to experience that. At the age of 7, I was molested again, and this one I didn't tell anyone about. I was so ashamed and I was afraid. It was one of my mom's boyfriends, and he was kind of abusive. um, other than the molestation. So I was really afraid to say anything, that there would be repercussions from him. And that fear helped in making that scarring impression on my brain. And it was these two events that really began years of sexual confusion for me. I would think and do things that no young child should be knowledgeable of or capable of, or should even be on their mind as a 5 and 6 and 7 year old. It shouldn't even be on their mind. But sex was always on my mind at that point, because of what happened. I would masturbate. There was sexual harm I would do, physical harm, pain was a big one. That was something that really, pain. I would make myself be in pain, especially sexually, just because I wanted an escape, a release of what was happening, and I couldn't comprehend it. I couldn't understand properly what was going on, and my brain wasn't processing it right, and it turned into depression. It turned into many suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts, anger, OCD. That was definitely something, even now I battle with OCD. Everything has to be in its place. And my kids have kind of broken me of that a little bit, thankfully. But yeah, and PTSD is something that I really, really struggled with. And it's PTSD Awareness Month. So yeah, PTSD, it's tough. It never really leaves you. You can go through counseling, but it's there. And for your family to try and understand what is going on in your brain and processing that themselves without really going through it is hard. It's hard for them to know how to react. And my wife has put up with a lot. She's dealt with a lot with me. And I'm very grateful for her. That's another huge blessing God brought into my life. But yeah, pornography was another thing that really, in those years, was really a struggle. Even now, I have to really watch my thoughts and be like, that's not what God wants. I can't do that. That's not what God wants. And so it is a constant battle with all that kind of stuff. It never really leaves you. I've been through a lot of years of counseling, thankfully, but it never really leaves you. It's there. It's a part of you. It's part of who you are. It's a part of why I do these testimonies. Is a good part of that, because I feel that through my experiences, I can empathize with people, I can understand, and I can help other people get through these situations and these tough times. And I encourage you to reach out if you're really struggling with this kind of stuff. Um, Anything you're really struggling with, just reach out to someone. Reach out to me at tpeter745 at gmail.com. Let me know. Let me talk to you. Let me try and help you through it. Sometimes you just need to talk about it with someone who understands and has been through it. And yeah, at that young age, my brain just could not process it. It couldn't understand. It couldn't cope. And I remember many times, even occasions this day, where I'll just think, I could just take this knife, I could end it, I could drown myself. If I could just stop breathing, step in front of that vehicle, throw yourself over that ledge. Just recently made someone do that over our bridge. They're alive right now, but struggling to survive. And I understand, because I was at that point. Now, when I do that, I think of my family, and that keeps me going. It keeps me strong. And I think of God and my faith in God, and just trusting that God can get me through these tough times, even when the depression hits you. Family and God can really get you through these times. And digging into the Bible and praying. Prayer is huge. I did take a lot of counseling, like I said. I've been taking medication. I'm on medication. And God's love, again, has really just helped bring me through this. When I was 7, we did move to Swift Current. We moved away from there. Swift Current is in the southwest corner of Saskatchewan, kind of almost the middle of the country. Not quite, but almost. Still west, thankfully. Um, and this started a bit of a chain of different schools in a few different cities within a few years, and a lot of moving around. So it was really difficult to make friends and to keep them. I would make them, but I would never really let anyone get to know me and get close to me. The moving around was part of that, but also what happened to me and my dealing with that was a fear of letting people get close to me, because people I let close to me um, had let me down and it hurt me. And my fear was in my head, and it was just that fear of, if I let someone in, they're going to hurt me too. They're going to let me down. Other people have done it, so they're going to let me down too. Why would they be any different? Uh, Eventually, we did move to Rhineland, which was just beside of Swift Current. It's a very, very small hamlet, very small. Um, but I was blessed to remain there for many years. That place was simply amazing. It was a great place to live and to grow up. And there was many caring people in the neighborhood. It was a very safe neighborhood. Um, and throughout that time, um, we would travel to see my mother in BC. My dad thought it was very important that we would have a relationship with my mother. And again, it tells the kind of character my dad has, that he was fighting for that we would do that, even though we did not have money. We really did not have money. And my mom would not pay for us to go see her. Finances was the claim. I again don't know her situation, so I can't judge. But my dad would pay for flights or busing us to get there. And it was a struggle for him to pay for that. We had to really, really scrape by for that. It was already a struggle to put food on the table, and yet we made it. God brought us through those situations. He brought us through it. He provided the funds to get us to go down there. And we'd be excited to see her. But when we'd see her, she would be really lost in her own world. She would smoke, even though I was really allergic to cigarette smoke. And so my face would be puffy, and my eyes would be sore the whole time I was there. And she would just be more into her boyfriends and her friends than she was being with us. And she would lie about my father, and she would insult him constantly, trying to really alienate us against my father. And she would threaten social services, and did bring social services in on a few occasions, trying to get us taken away from my father. But she would threaten to call the police on us, and it wasn't a good situation. And again, she's been dealing with a lot of mental health issues, so I know that had a lot to do with it. But I again can't judge, because that's up to God to judge. I've forgiven her. I've moved on, and we're rebuilding our relationship. Thank goodness, even though I had not talked to her for several years because of everything. But yeah, and I know she'd be trying to convince us to live with her, even though it wasn't really about that. It was more about the check, the welfare check. And so growing up, I really buried a lot of my struggles into writing. It was something I could feel like I get a passion for. It was a healthy release. I could escape into this world. I could write poetry, and again, escape and get those feelings out onto paper. As a teenager, I was baptized, and it was a spiritual high. But then the devil really narrowed in on my weaknesses at this point. He really, really took me down bad paths. I began swearing a lot. I began sexual sin being really, really took a big role in my life at that point. It was my vice of choice. Depression and suicidal thoughts were pressing in all around me. It was constant. I would always be thinking about killing myself, and I was just miserable. I thought I hid it well. I don't know. If you talk to my parents, I don't know how well I actually hid it, especially in the later years when it became really bad, when I was an older teen. So I know at that point my parents were just super frustrated, and they eventually told me I had to move out. But I'll get to that. And it forced me to really get to be good at hiding my emotions, at pushing people further away, always keeping them at arm's length. And that is something I struggle with today. And it's a real battle to get through this, and to really deal with this and get down to that. a big blessing did come into my life at this point when I started drawing closer to a woman named Karen. And I'd known her since grade 3, but we'd never really connected. And then high school started, and we started sharing a lot more spare periods together. We started hanging out a lot. Had a lot of the same classes, and the relationship really grew at this point until grade 12 when I finally asked her to be my prom date or grad date. And then we started actually dating. And having a relationship was really a struggle. Um, really a struggle when I dealt with all of that, just coming to grips with everything and trying to let someone in at a time when I had not let anybody in. And I didn't like being touched. So that wasn't really much, it wasn't really a part of our relationship very much, any touching or anything, which I mean, kept us, um, chastity like was definitely there because of that. We were able to stay pure, um, and saved it for marriage. Um, and I think not being able to touch that really helps towards that. Um, but for me, it was really hard. I didn't feel comfortable holding hands. I didn't feel comfortable putting a hand even on her shoulder. Kissing didn't happen until like after we got engaged. And getting engaged was hard for me because that meant I had to let someone in, but I did not want to lose her. I did not want to lose this one. She was the one for me, and I knew it. She was the one. And I loved her dearly, and I love her now more so than ever, just because she has put up with so much. When we moved down to Frontier, my parents did when I was in grade 12. I refused to move down because I did not want to end my time at high school um, in a different school halfway through grade 12 with people I didn't know. So my parents paid for me to be able to live on my own, which was great. I had my own space. It actually was wonderful, but um, I ended up moving down to Frontier after graduation so I could live with my parents again and work towards college and wedding. And I'd always struggled with health conditions. Bad knees had prevented me from competitive sports um, that I really loved, and acid reflux made eating, to this day, makes eating really unpleasant. I also discovered at this point that I had a heart condition, Wolff Parkinson White syndrome, and that's where you get an extra pathway between the chambers of your heart, a little hole, and it would make me dizzy. It would make me anxious. It would cause my heart to race out of control, and it would be quite painful. It feels like a heart attack, like you're going into tachycardia because of this. And this helped to fuel my anger, anger at God, and just anger at the world. I was miserable to be around. Just ask my parents. I was miserable. And the only cure for this was writing or calling and visiting Karen on weekends. That really helped me. She was my lifesaver in an ocean of sorrow and depression and darkness and just emotional instability. She was my ocean. She was my life raft in that ocean. And it did get to a point where I was serious about killing myself. I'd written several notes. And unbeknownst to her, she would talk me down from these things and really help me settle my emotions. So God used her in ways that she didn't even realize at that time. I don't think she realizes to this day how important she was, and that she's the reason I'm alive today. Really is. And yeah, my state got so bad, and I was so angry at my parents that they ended up telling me I'd have to move out. It was at this point that I really had a God moment, a moment that changed my life. I wrote a note. I got down on my knees. It was my final suicide note. I had this knife. I was going to end my life. So I knelt down to do so. I felt a strong grip take a hold of my wrist when I knelt down, though. And I fought hard against that pressure because I wanted that knife to kill me. I wanted to end my life, end the pain that I was going through. And I fought until my hands grew numb. Literally, they grew numb. And the knife just dropped. And I lay down on the ground. I broke down. I cried. I cried so hard. And this voice popped into my head and said, "What are you doing? I love you." And I knew it was God. I knew it was God reaching out. There was no doubt. An angel had grabbed my wrist. I fully believe in angels and the work that angels do. I fully believe in that God uses them to protect us and to guide us, and the Holy Spirit to speak to us. And I can only thank God for saving my life. And it was at that point I decided I was going to change. I was going to try and live my life for God. I took my parents' recommendation and offered to go to Miller College of the Bible, which was a time I loved. I cherished. I grew in my faith. And I also got engaged at that point, and I was able to deal with some of the stuff I was dealing with, but it was still there. I never really fully dealt with it. I talked about it a little bit. I was blessed to be able to mentor a young gentleman at that point who was dealing with a lot of the same stuff I was, but he was a teenager. He was at my teenage point where I could look back and I could see myself in what he was going through with his dad was doing to him what my mom had done to me, and not showing up and just not being there, not being around. And he really needed a father figure. He needed someone out there who could just be with him, a male figure in his life. And so I took him under my wing at that point, and I believe God placed him there for me. He knew I needed it, and he knew this wonderful kid needed it as well. And we spent many hours playing cribbage. We would hang out, we would talk, we would go out for ice cream. And I was the only one he would go to church with. So his mom was really grateful that, I would take him to church. That was the only way that she could get him to church. So she begged me to take him to church because that was the only way he was going. So we went to church together. He didn't always enjoy it, but we went to church together, and he would go with me. And that meant so much to me. God really knew what I needed. He knew I needed that. I decided after Bible school, we got married, and we moved to Saskatoon so I could study youth care work. And I discovered that youth care work was really too hard emotionally for me. I wasn't ready for it. I couldn't do it, considering my background. After a year there, we moved back home to Swift Current, and God blessed us so many times that we were just blind to at that time. We didn't see it. I had my first heart procedure done when I was attending Miller, and I did not want to leave school, so I only took a week or so off, and then I went right back to school. I continued my healing there, even though I was shocked that I was back at school, but I did not want to miss it. I was enjoying my time there. And the procedure was very uncomfortable. They had to put me into tachycardia in order to find the hole. And they had to go up through the groin with electrodes. You could feel and see on the screen that the electrodes as they were underneath your skin. And they put you into tachycardia. You have to be awake for the full procedure. And they had to do this twice, because first time it failed. Second one was successful. But those were hard procedures. They were really hard to go through. They hurt a lot. They've left me with a lot of scar tissue underneath the cartilage of my ribs that gives me pain every day since then. So I've been dealing with that since I was 18, and I'm now 35. And I deal with that pain every day. Today is a bad day, a really bad day, because the weather really plays a havoc on that. And it gets so bad at times that I can't breathe, or I collapse in pain, or tears will stream down my face. I hide it. Oftentimes people can't tell that I'm in pain, but I'm in pain. My wife knows. She knows me too well about that. And doctors have really struggled in trying to resolve the issue and find out what the issue is, but they've just not been able to do it. Um, they've just not been able to find what's wrong. They call it fibromyalgia, but that's just something they slap on things when they don't know what to call it anymore. Yeah, but we have two children that have been amazing blessings. My daughter and my son, they're amazing. Aside from my faith, they are my world. These children are amazing, big blessings. You're never ready for children, but it was definitely no crap moment when we found out we were having my first son, but I wouldn't take it back. Not at all. These kids are a true blessing. Family is a blessing. And you need to really, if you're working too much, as I ended up working too much, you miss out. You miss out on a lot of these precious time with your children. And I learned that I didn't like that. I hated the management job I was in. It would really hurt my health. It didn't give me time for my kids. So when I was let go from that job, it was the best thing God could have done for me at that time. It gave me the chance to face the issues I was dealing with, to get the counseling I needed, to get the help I needed. I finally had the courage to see a psychiatrist and to start on meds to try and balance my emotions. And that is courage to actually get help. It's weakness to refuse help and think you can do it on your own, because you can't. And you need God, and you need the people that God places in your life to get you through these things. And then I was blessed with a job that I loved as well. And I did draw close to my family, and I was able to get control over a lot of what was going on in my brain, but there was still something not right. My counselor did therapy sessions to kind of bring all those fragmented memories of the molestations into one memory, so that my brain could try and process it and heal. And it did help a bit. It definitely did help. And it did still hit me though. I still struggled with it, and yeah, it was a big struggle. But I hadn't been talking to my mom for 6 years at this point, and I ended up winning a trip to Vancouver through work, because I was one of the top sales on a certain product. And I told my mom that she could either be in my life and use this chance to be in my life, or she could stay out of my life. And thankfully, she chose to be in my life, and we're rebuilding that trust. We're rebuilding that relationship. She apologized, and I know she has a lot of issues that she's been dealing with, and it's still a struggle, but it's a struggle worth making, to have that relationship with your mother again. And I still struggle daily with ups and downs, depression, anxiety. For a while there, I could not walk properly. I couldn't talk properly, because I was having such bad pain that it was causing stress in my brain, and it would overload it. My memory now really is still not great. But it all came to head, and I ended up on disability, just because I was having so many seizures that was really affecting my brain. And God had to work on me. He really had to work on me. I started doing devotions. I was doing political interviews and stuff before, and God really told me, that's not what you're doing anymore. You may enjoy that, but that's not what I want for you. You're going to do what I want. And I changed my channel to doing devotions and getting testimonies out from people. And that's really been a blessing. It's healed me. I mean, I can walk again. I can talk again. I still have to concentrate on my words at times. So I apologize for that, but I do have to focus on the words. But I can do it. God has healed me, miraculously healed me. And he's brought an amazing pastoral team into my life as well, to really help mentor me and help me through these times. And I thank them for that. And now I've got my Cool Explorations channel that is not mine, but it's God's, where I can share God's word with people online. I can talk to people about their things that they've dealt with and how God has really helped them. And God's got some amazing things planned, things that are in the works that I'm really excited about. And I'm really hoping that, that God does bring them to fruition, because we've got some big things in the works. But that's my testimony. Thank you all for listening. And I hope that it's reached somebody and really touched somebody's life, and that it can really help somebody. Because remember, God is there. He's always there. And I want to leave you with a verse from Philemon 1:7. Your love has given me great joy and encouragement, because you, brother, have refreshed the hearts of the Lord's people. And that is what we aim to do, refreshing and reach people for Christ.
You have just been listening to the Cool Expressions podcast, and I have shared my testimony today. I thought it was pertinent, since I asked everybody else to share theirs, so it's only fair that I share mine. Thank you for listening. Well, I have just been blessed with so many people who are requesting to be on the show, and I'm impressed with how many people want to share their testimonies or what they're doing for the Lord right now. If I haven't got back to you, I promise I will get back to you. I look forward to speaking with each of you and interviewing you. And keep tuning into the show. There's lots of new people that are coming on here. And if you're considering wanting to come on the show, just shoot me an email at tpeters745@gmail.com. And I will get back to you.